Welcome to our channel, your gateway to the most spine-chilling tales and unnerving true stories. Today, we present a harrowing true story, The Midnight Game. Get ready to be on the edge of your seat as we delve into this unsettling narrative. But be warned, comfort is the last thing you'll find here. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a group of high school students gather around a large oak tree in a secluded spot. The night is pitch black, the only source of light being a full moon casting an eerie glow over the area. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from nearby fireplaces. The students, all dressed in hoodies and jeans, form a circle around a small altar they have constructed. On the altar rests a single white candle, its flame flickering in the slight breeze. Beside the candle is a piece of paper with each of their names written on it. They stand in silence, their faces illuminated by the light of the moon. The leader of the group, Sarah, steps forward. She is tall and slender, with long black hair that falls past her shoulders. Her eyes are piercing, filled with determination and perhaps a hint of fear. She clears her throat and addresses the group. "All right, everyone. Are you all ready to play?" The other students nod in unison, their faces pale in the moonlight. Sarah takes a deep breath and begins to speak. "Then let's do this. Everyone, gather around the altar." They all take their places around the altar, standing shoulder to shoulder. Sarah reaches out and lights the candle with a wooden match, casting a warm, yellow glow over the group. As the flame grows steadily, she hands out a sheet of paper to each of the students, who carefully fold it into a small origami crane before placing it in their pockets. "Now," Sarah continues, "we need to choose someone to be the first guardian. The guardian's job is to make sure everyone else stays safe and follows the rules. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer?" No one steps forward, so Sarah points to one of the boys in the group, Thomas. "All right, Thomas, you're our guardian for tonight." Thomas nods, taking on the responsibility with a grim determination. "All right, everyone. Remember the rules. We have to keep our candles lit, and we can't leave this spot until 3:30. Anyone who breaks the rules will be disqualified." The other students nod in agreement, their faces etched with determination and fear. Sarah turns back to the altar, picks up a wooden mallet, and raps 3 times on the wooden door behind them. The sound echoes through the night, and they all hear a faint voice whisper from the other side. "Who dares to summon me?" Shivers run down the spines of the students as they realize what they have just unleashed. Sarah speaks again, her voice steady despite her growing terror. "We have come to play the midnight game, ancient spirit. We ask your permission to begin." There is a long silence, and then the voice whispers again, its words barely audible over the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. "Very well, you may begin." As the final word fades away, the students feel a chill run down their spines. They exchange nervous glances, but none of them dare back out now. Sarah looks at her watch and realizes that it's almost midnight. "All right, everyone," she whispers. "Time to begin." The students all close their eyes and take a deep breath, steeling themselves for what is to come. The air around them grows heavy with tension, and they can feel the presence of the ancient spirit watching them from the shadows. As the clock strikes midnight, they open their eyes, expecting to see something terrible lurking in the darkness. But at first, nothing happens. The silence is deafening, and they all start to wonder if the spirit has changed its mind. But then, they hear a door slam shut somewhere nearby, and the hair on the back of their necks stands on end. They exchange terrified glances, realizing that the game has begun. The night passes in a series of terrifying ordeals. Doors slam shut and open by themselves, shadows dance across the ground, and they feel an icy breath on the backs of their necks. The students try to stay calm and focus on keeping their candles lit, but with each passing minute, the tension grows thicker and their nerves become more frayed. At one point, Thomas, the guardian, turns around to see a figure standing just behind him. His heart stops for a moment, but when he realizes it's just one of the other students, he feels a wave of relief wash over him. He quickly reminds them of the rules, and they all go back to their positions around the altar. As the clock nears 3:30, Sarah can feel the desperation building inside her. She knows that if they don't finish the game before then, they will all be trapped here forever. She looks at the other students, their faces pale and drawn, and she knows they feel it too. Suddenly, the air is filled with a deafening roar, and the ground beneath their feet begins to shake violently. The candles flicker wildly, threatening to go out at any moment. As the shaking subsides, they hear a voice, deep and resonant, echoing through the trees. "There are only 5 minutes left. You must find the key before time runs out." The students exchange panicked glances. They know they must find the key before the game ends, but they have no idea where it could be hidden. Sarah takes a deep breath and tries to steady herself. "All right, everyone," she says. "We need to split up and search for the key. But remember, if anyone breaks the rules or leaves this spot, they're disqualified. And we all lose if the candles go out. Let's just stay calm and focus." The students nod in agreement, their eyes wide with fear. They scatter, searching frantically through the darkness. Time seems to slow down as they move, each step heavier than the last. They know that they only have a few precious minutes left, and that their fates hang in the balance. As they search, they begin to see strange visions, doors that weren't there before, or shadows that seem to move on their own. The spirits of the forest are reaching out to them, trying to confuse and frighten them. But they push through the terror, driven by the desperate need to find the key. Finally, one of the students, Chloe, trips over something in the darkness. As she lands on the ground, she feels a cold, hard object dig into her hand. She looks down to see a small key, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her heart leaps with joy, and she quickly stands up, waving the key in the air. The other students gather around her, relief washing over their faces. "We found it," Chloe cries. "Now we can end this." They hurry back to the altar, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they approach, they see the wooden door standing open, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness. The spirit's voice echoes through the night once more. "Very well. You have found the key. But remember, you must face your fears to escape. Do you dare descend into the darkness?" The students exchange glances, their fear battling with their determination. Finally, Chloe steps forward, her hand tightly gripping the key. "I'll go first," she says, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "As long as we stay together, we can do this." The others nod, following her down the staircase into the depths of the forest. The air grows colder and darker with each step, the weight of the spirit's presence pressing down on them like a physical force. They can feel their courage wavering, their minds clouding with fear. But they keep moving, driven by the hope of escaping this nightmare. Finally, they emerge from the staircase into a clearing, the full moon casting a soft glow over the area. They turn around to see the oak tree, its branches stretching high into the sky, the altar and the candles now tiny specks in the distance. The students look at each other, relief and exhaustion etched into their faces. They take a few tentative steps away from the tree, and as they do, the spirits seem to fade away, leaving them once more in the safety of the familiar world. They gather in a tight group, their bodies shaking from the ordeal they've just endured. "We did it," Chloe whispers, her voice barely audible above the sound of their ragged breathing. "We survived the midnight game." The others nod, their faces still pale with fear. Slowly, they begin to make their way back to their homes, the warm glow of their houses beckoning them like a beacon of safety. But they all know that the memories of this night will stay with them forever, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the veil of reality. In the stillness of the night, a lone candle flickers, its dancing flame casting eerie shadows across the faces of the remaining students. They huddle together, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they clutch their candles tightly. The air is thick with tension and fear, and each of them is acutely aware of the presence of the dark entity that now prowls the neighborhood. As the minutes tick by, the students begin to lose their candles one by one. Each time, a chorus of terrified screams fills the night air. The darkness closes in, making it difficult for them to see anything beyond the circle of light cast by the candles. They can feel the entity's cold presence pressing against them, as if it's trying to extinguish their last remaining source of hope. Ethan, the only one left with a candle, is trembling uncontrollably. His heart pounds in his chest as he tries to keep the wick from guttering out. He can feel the weight of the responsibility resting on his shoulders, knowing that if he fails, the entity will claim them all. As the clock inches closer to 3:33 am, the entity's whispers grow louder and more frantic. It taunts them, promising that soon they will all be free from their mortal coils. Ethan strains to keep his focus, knowing that the moment the clock strikes, the entity will make its move. Just then, there's a sudden crash from nearby. One of the students, Sarah, screams in terror as she realizes that the entity has torn a branch from a tree and flung it at her. Blood trickles down her face as she crumples to the ground. The others cry out in horror, their panic growing as they realize that the entity is growing more desperate. With a final, deafening screech, the clock strikes 3:33 am. The entity lunges at Ethan, its icy fingers grasping for his throat. In a desperate act of self-preservation, he drops his candle, sending it spinning across the ground. There's a moment of silence, and then the entity disappears, vanquished by the dawn's first light. The survivors stagger to their feet, their limbs leaden with exhaustion and fear. They exchange confused glances, unsure of what to make of what just happened. As they begin to process the horrors they've just endured, they realize that their lives will never be the same. The memories of the night's events will haunt them for the rest of their days. Ethan, the sole survivor, tries to comfort his friends as they lean on each other for support. He knows that the darkness is still out there, waiting for another chance to strike. But for now, they can find solace in the knowledge that they survived. Together, they vow never to speak of the midnight game again, and to do whatever it takes to put the nightmares behind them. As they slowly make their way home, the first rays of sunlight break through the trees, bathing the neighborhood in warmth and light. But even as they step back into the comfort of their own beds, they can't help but feel a lingering chill in the air, a reminder of the terror that they've just faced. The memories will stay with them forever, a testament to the power of the ancient evil that they've awakened. The sun beams through the window of Ethan's bedroom, casting a warm glow across the room. He tosses and turns, unable to shake the nightmares that have plagued him since the night of the midnight game. He glances at his alarm clock, noting that it's already late. He's been oversleeping ever since. With a groan, he rolls out of bed and makes his way to the bathroom. As he stares at his pale, exhausted face in the mirror, he realizes that he hasn't been the same since that fateful night. Ethan decides to reach out to his friends, hoping they're feeling the same way he is. He texts Chloe first, asking if she's up for a coffee and a chat. To his relief, she responds immediately, suggesting they meet at the local coffee shop. As he walks down the familiar streets, he can't help but notice that something feels off. The air feels colder, and the shadows seem darker. He shakes off the feeling, telling himself it's just his imagination. Chloe is already waiting for him at a table when he arrives at the coffee shop. She looks even more exhausted than he feels, with dark circles under her eyes. They exchange greetings before Ethan sits down, leaning in to speak quietly. "Have you been having any weird experiences since that night?" he asks, hesitantly. Chloe nods, her expression grim. "I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye, hearing whispers in the darkness. And it's not just me. I've talked to the others, and they're all experiencing the same thing." Ethan takes a shaky breath. "I've been feeling it too. I think we should talk to someone about this." They decide to meet with the local priest, who has been counseling other survivors of supernatural phenomena. The priest listens intently as they describe their experiences, nodding thoughtfully. "The entity you encountered is ancient and powerful," he says gravely. "It is called the Shadow Man, and it feeds on fear and despair. You have managed to survive its first attack, but it will not give up so easily." He warns them not to discuss the midnight game any further, as doing so might attract the attention of even darker forces. The group nods, frightened but determined to keep their silence. As the days go by, the strange phenomena only seem to intensify. Lights flicker on and off, objects move on their own, and they catch glimpses of shadowy figures darting through the corners of their eyes. Ethan begins to sleep with a knife under his pillow, convinced that the Shadow Man will come for him next. One night, he wakes up to the sound of a soft, whispering voice. "Ethan," it says, and then trails off. He feels a chill run down his spine. "You cannot hide from us forever," the voice continues. "We will find you, and when we do." It pauses again, and Ethan feels as if invisible hands are squeezing the air from his lungs. He tries to calm his racing heart, telling himself it's just a figment of his imagination, a side effect of the trauma he's experienced. But as the days pass, he begins to wonder if it's really just his imagination. He starts to feel like he's being watched, followed. He tries to reach out to his friends, but they seem to be experiencing the same thing. They decide to meet up at a local park, hoping to feel a sense of safety in numbers. As they sit on a bench, they discuss what they should do. "I think we should go back to the priest," Chloe suggests. "He might have more advice for us." The others nod in agreement, and they decide to make an appointment for the next day. As they leave the park, they feel a sense of relief, but it's short-lived. They haven't even taken 10 steps when they hear the whispers again. "We're coming for you," the voice says, eerily familiar. Ethan shudders, feeling a chill race up his spine. They hurry to the priest's office, their hearts racing. When they finally arrive, they spill their story to the priest, who listens intently. "The Shadow Man is growing desperate," he says gravely. It knows that you survived its first attempt and that you are now aware of its presence. It will stop at nothing to make you its next victims. He pauses, his expression grim. There is only one way to defeat it. Their hearts pound in unison as the priest continues, you must find the midnight game and destroy it. Only then will the Shadow Man be banished from your lives forever. They exchange shocked glances. Destroying the midnight game sounds impossible, but they know they have no other choice. They steel themselves for the battle that lies ahead. As they leave the priest's office, they feel a new sense of determination welling up inside them. They may be terrified of the Shadow Man, but they refuse to let it win. They will find the midnight game, and they will end this nightmare once and for all. The next few days are a blur of research and planning. They scour the internet for information about the midnight game, but most of what they find is rumor and speculation. They consult books on supernatural lore, hoping to find some clue as to where the game might be hidden. As they work, they begin to piece together the history of the Shadow Man and the midnight game. The midnight game was first played centuries ago, during a time of great upheaval and fear. A powerful witch had created it as a way to control the spirits of the dead, using them to terrorize the living. Over time, the game became twisted and corrupted, attracting darker forces that sought to use it for their own nefarious purposes. The Shadow Man was one such force, a malevolent entity that had fed on the fear and despair generated by the game for centuries. As they learn more about the game's history, they also discover that it can only be destroyed by a group of 6 individuals, each with a unique connection to the supernatural. Ethan, Chloe, and the others realize that they are the chosen ones, the only ones capable of defeating the Shadow Man and freeing their town from its eternal darkness. They gather their courage and set out to find the midnight game. The trail leads them deep into the woods, to an ancient ruined temple. As they approach, they can feel the weight of the Shadow Man's presence pressing down upon them. They exchange nervous glances, steeling themselves for the battle that lies ahead. Inside the temple, they find a massive chessboard, carved into the floor. At the center of the board is a single pawn, carved from black obsidian. They know that the midnight game is hidden within the pawn, and that destroying it will banish the Shadow Man once and for all. As they stand over the chessboard, they can feel the Shadow Man's malice coursing through their veins. They exchange a final look, nodding in agreement. Chloe steps forward, her hand reaching out to touch the obsidian pawn. As her fingers make contact, a blinding light fills the temple, and a deafening roar echoes through the forest. When the light fades and the echoes die away, the Shadow Man is gone, and peace finally returns to their town. They emerge from the temple, exhausted but triumphant. Ethan looks at his friends, feeling a newfound sense of camaraderie and strength. They may have survived the Shadow Man's attack, but they know that the battle against darkness is far from over. They vow to remain vigilant, to protect their town and each other, and to never again let fear and despair rule their lives. As they walk back home, the sun begins to rise, casting a warm, golden light across the landscape. For the first time in weeks, they feel a sense of hope and renewal, knowing that they have faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The midnight game may be destroyed, but the memories of their ordeal will live on, serving as a reminder of the power of courage and determination in the face of fear. The survivors of the midnight game found themselves forever changed by their terrifying experiences. Ethan, the lone survivor, was haunted by the memory of the dark entity that had tried to claim him. The others couldn't shake the chilling sensation that it was still out there, waiting for another chance to strike. They decided they couldn't live like this anymore and banded together to find a way to banish the entity permanently. The first order of business was to research. They combed through books, articles, and ancient manuscripts, desperate for any information that might help them understand the entity and its origins. They consulted with experts in the supernatural and even sought out a local priest who had dealt with similar cases in the past. As they delved deeper into the subject, they uncovered a hidden history of their town, revealing a long line of similar rituals and entities that had plagued their ancestors for generations. As they learned more about the entity, they began to understand that it wasn't just some random force of darkness. It was connected to their town, to their very existence. They discovered that the town had been founded by a group of settlers who had fled from Europe after being accused of practicing black magic. They believed that their new home had been chosen because it was a place where the veil between the living and the dead was particularly thin, making it easier for them to contact the spirits and perform their rituals. Unfortunately, their efforts to escape their past only served to bring it with them. Over the years, They continued to practice their dark arts, attracting the attention of powerful entities that sought to use their town as a gateway to our world. This had resulted in a cycle of terror and suffering that had been passed down through the generations. The survivors of the Midnight Game now found themselves at the center of this ancient conflict. As they struggled to come to terms with their newfound knowledge, they began to experience strange phenomena. Doors slammed shut on their own, shadows darted across walls, and they would catch glimpses of figures moving just out of sight. It was clear that the entity was still after them, and it wasn't going to give up easily. The survivors knew that they had to take action before it was too late. After much discussion and debate, they decided to perform a ritual that they hoped would banish the entity once and for all. They gathered at the site of the original Midnight Game, the abandoned house on the edge of town. The air was thick with tension as they lit candles and began to chant ancient incantations. As they progressed through the ritual, they could feel the power building around them, a palpable force that seemed to emanate from the very ground they stood on. The climax of the ritual required each survivor to confront their greatest fear, to face the darkness head-on and emerge triumphant. For Ethan, it was the memory of the cold, icy grip that had nearly claimed him. For others, it was the fear of losing loved ones or being trapped in the cycle of terror forever. One by one, they faced their fears and emerged stronger, more united than ever before. As the final words of the ritual faded away, there was a moment of stillness, almost as if time itself had paused. Then, with a rush of wind and a flash of light, the entity was gone. The air seemed to clear, and the survivors could breathe a sigh of relief. They had done it. They had defeated the ancient evil that had plagued their town for generations. In the aftermath of the ritual, the survivors began to rebuild their lives. They vowed never to speak of the Midnight Game again, fearing that doing so might attract the attention of other, even more powerful forces. They formed a tight-knit group, supporting each other through the trauma they had endured and helping each other heal. And although they knew that the darkness would always be there, waiting just beyond the edges of the light, they took comfort in the knowledge that they had faced it together and emerged victorious. It had been months since the horrific events of the Midnight Game, and the survivors had tried to piece their lives back together. They had met with a local priest, who had warned them about the ancient and powerful entity they had unleashed. The group had experienced strange phenomena, and they knew that the entity was still after them. Despite the risk, they had decided to come together to find a way to banish it permanently. Their research had led them deep into the town's hidden history, uncovering a long line of similar rituals and entities that had plagued their ancestors for generations. They had consulted with experts in the supernatural, studying ancient rituals and learning about the tools and spells needed to confront the entity. Finally, they had gathered all the necessary items and prepared themselves for the final confrontation. It was a crisp autumn night as they made their way to the woods where they would perform the ritual. The full moon cast eerie shadows across the ground, and a chill wind rustled through the trees. The group consisted of Ethan, Sarah, Mike, and the priest. They moved silently, their flashlights illuminating the path ahead. The priest led them to a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. In the center of the clearing stood a large, circular stone altar, its surface covered in carvings of unfamiliar symbols. As they laid out the tools and items they had gathered, the priest began to chant in a language long forgotten. The air around them grew thick with an unsettling energy, and the group felt a sense of foreboding tighten like a vice around their chests. Ethan lit the 5 candles arranged around the altar, casting flickering shadows across the group as they continued with the ritual. Each step required concentration and precision, and any mistake could prove fatal. Time seemed to stand still as they performed the intricate ceremony. The energy in the air grew more intense with each passing moment, and the group could feel the entity's presence growing stronger. Just as they believed they had successfully trapped it, the entity struck. A blinding flash of light filled the clearing, accompanied by a deafening roar. The group was thrown to the ground, their ears ringing from the sound. When they looked up, the entity was gone, but they knew it had not been defeated. Exhausted and demoralized, they fled back to the safety of the town. They met at Sarah's house to regroup and discuss their next move. They were all shaken by the events that had transpired, but they refused to give up. They knew that the entity was powerful and ancient, and that it would take everything they had to destroy it once and for all. As they sat around the kitchen table, the priest spoke. The entity is intelligent and cunning. It will not be an easy fight. We must continue to work together, to pool our knowledge and strength. We must find a way to finish what we started tonight. His words hung in the air like a weight, but they also served as a reminder of the importance of their mission. The survivors knew that the battle was far from over, but they also knew that they could not give up hope. They would find a way to defeat the entity, to free their town from its dark curse, and to finally find peace. The journey ahead would be long and dangerous, but they would face it together, united in their determination to prevail. The survivors of the Midnight Game gather once again, their minds and hearts still reeling from the horrors they experienced. They meet in a local community center, which has been transformed into a makeshift command center. Posters and maps cover the walls, detailing their research and strategies for combating the ancient entity that haunts their town. Ethan, the sole survivor of the Midnight Game, takes a seat at the head of the table. He is visibly shaken, but determined to see this through. "We need to understand this thing," he says, gesturing to the posters. "It feeds on fear and despair. If we can find a way to spread hope and unity, we might be able to weaken its hold." The others nod in agreement. "I think we should start by organizing community events," suggests Sarah. "Something fun and positive that brings people together." There are murmurs of approval around the table. "Like a block party or a carnival," someone offers. Ethan stands up and addresses the group. "I think that's a great idea," he says. "But we need to do more than just have fun. We need to use these events as a way to strengthen our bonds with each other, to remind ourselves that we are not alone in this fight." The group spends hours brainstorming ideas, debating the finer points of their strategy. They decide to reach out to local businesses and organizations, asking for their support and involvement in these events. They also discuss the possibility of starting community service projects, such as cleaning up the town's parks or organizing a food drive for the needy. As the hours pass, the sense of unity and purpose grows stronger among the survivors. They feel a renewed sense of determination to take back their town from the darkness that has consumed it. They know that their efforts may not be enough, but they refuse to give up hope. The first community event is planned for the following weekend. It will be a block party, with live music, games, and food vendors. The group works tirelessly to promote the event, posting flyers around town and spreading the word through social media. The response is overwhelmingly positive, with residents of all ages and backgrounds expressing their eagerness to attend. On the day of the event, the survivors arrive early to set up. They work side by side with local business owners and volunteers, transforming the block into a vibrant, festive atmosphere. The air is filled with laughter and the sounds of music as people begin to arrive. Old friends and neighbors reconnect, sharing stories and memories as they stroll along the street. As the day progresses, the survivors take the opportunity to discuss their plans for future events and projects. They feel a sense of pride in their efforts and a growing sense of accomplishment. They know that their work is far from over, but they are inspired by the positive response they've received from the community. Late into the evening, as the last of the revelers begin to leave, Ethan finds himself reflecting on the day's events. He looks around at the smiling faces and the sense of community that has been restored to their town. Despite the darkness that still lurks in the shadows, he feels a newfound sense of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they can defeat this ancient evil and reclaim their lives in the process. As he turns to leave, he spots a small, abandoned playground in the distance. It's overgrown with weeds and covered in graffiti. An idea begins to form in his mind. "Hey," he says to the group, "why don't we clean up that playground next? It'd be a great place for kids to play and have fun. And it'd be a symbol of our renewed commitment to the future of this town." The others nod in agreement, their faces lit up with determination. And so, the survivors of the Midnight Game continue their fight against the darkness, one community event and one small act of kindness at a time. They may not know if they will ultimately succeed, but they are no longer afraid. They are united, and they are filled with hope. The town of Haven begins to heal, but the entity's grip does not loosen easily. It senses the shift in energy and targets those who are most vulnerable, feeding on their fear and despair. The survivors, now united against the darkness, must work tirelessly to help those in need and protect them from the entity's influence. At the same time, they begin to uncover a hidden network of cultists who have been operating in the shadows. These cultists, obsessed with power and control, are attempting to summon the entity themselves, believing that they can harness its power for their own twisted ends. Their rituals, performed in secret at abandoned sites around town, grow bolder and more dangerous as they become more desperate. Ethan, still haunted by the events of the Midnight Game, finds himself drawn to the cultists' activities. He longs for the power he felt during the game and believes that the entity could offer him a sense of purpose and belonging. He begins to infiltrate the cult, gathering information and trying to stop them from within. Meanwhile, the survivors organize community events and initiatives aimed at spreading positivity and strengthening bonds between neighbors. They create a community garden, organize block parties, and start a support group for those struggling with addiction and mental health issues. The town begins to thrive, and the light they create grows brighter with each passing day. But the cultists are not the only ones who wish to control the entity. A team of paranormal investigators, hearing about the events in Haven, arrives in town, determined to unlock the entity's secrets. They begin to study the ancient texts and artifacts left behind by the cultists, hoping to harness the entity's power for their own gain. Their presence further complicates the situation, as they may inadvertently unleash a new wave of darkness upon the town. As the battle between light and darkness rages on, Ethan finds himself torn between his loyalty to the survivors and his growing allegiance to the cult. He must make a choice: continue to gather information for the survivors, or join the cultists in their dark rituals. The fate of Haven hangs in the balance, and the decisions he makes will shape the town's future forever. The survivors, their lives forever altered by the events of the previous night, decide to confront the cultists who had been attempting to summon the entity. They gather information and locate the hidden lair deep within the woods, surrounded by ancient ruins and shrouded in a sense of foreboding. The group, now united and stronger than ever, approaches the lair cautiously, their hearts pounding with equal parts determination and fear. As they draw closer, they see flickering candlelight dancing through the trees, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The air is thick with the scent of incense and fear. They can hear chanting and the sound of animals being sacrificed, a horrifying reminder of the darkness that lurks within the hearts of men. The survivors stealthily make their way through the underbrush, using their knowledge of the woods to avoid detection. They spot cultists patrolling the perimeter, their faces twisted into masks of hatred and fanaticism. They exchange glances, knowing that they must act soon before the cultists realize they are here. Suddenly, a plan forms in Ethan's mind. He signals to the others, and they begin to move into position. As the cultists continue their ritual, unaware of the danger that looms, the survivors launch a coordinated attack. They strike quickly and silently, taking out the cultists one by one. The fight is brutal and unforgiving, but the survivors persevere. They are fueled by their hatred for the cultists and their determination to protect their town from the entity's influence. As the last cultist falls, the ritual comes to an abrupt halt. The air grows still and ominous, as if the entity itself is watching from the shadows. The survivors exchange nervous glances, knowing that their battle is far from over. They must find a way to stop the entity once and for all. They search the lair, finding numerous artifacts and scrolls that shed light on the entity's origins and its connection to the town. They also discover a hidden chamber deep within the ruins, where they believe they can confront the entity directly. They steel themselves for the battle ahead, drawing strength from their newfound bond and the knowledge that they are fighting for something much greater than themselves. The survivors enter the chamber, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. The room is dark and damp, the air heavy with the stench of rot and decay. In the center of the room sits the entity, its malevolent presence filling the air like a physical weight. It speaks to them, its voice a chilling whisper that sends shivers down their spines. "I have walked this earth since the dawn of time," it hisses. "And you pathetic mortals think you can defeat me? You are nothing but insects, scrabbling in the dirt, too blind to see the power that lies within your grasp." The survivors exchange glances, their resolve wavering for a moment. But then, from the depths of the chamber, they hear a faint whisper. It is the sound of their town, the sound of hope and resilience, echoing through the darkness. And in that moment, they know what they must do. They stand together, facing the entity, and raise their voices in unison. They sing of their love for their town, of the strength they have found in each other, and of their determination to fight for a better future. The sound of their voices grows louder, stronger, until it fills the chamber and echoes throughout the world. The entity roars in fury, its power weakening as it is assaulted by the pure light of human emotion. The survivors do not relent, their voices becoming a force of nature, a weapon against the darkness. Finally, with a terrible scream, the entity is banished, sent back to the void from which it came. The chamber grows bright, as if a great weight has been lifted from the world. The survivors collapse to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. They have saved their town, But they know that the battle against the darkness is far from over. They will continue to stand together, to fight against the fear and despair that threatens to consume them, and to build a future where hope and love reign supreme. As the days turn into weeks and then months, the town begins to heal. The survivors continue to work tirelessly to rebuild their lives and their community. They organize events that bring people together, fostering a sense of unity and belonging. They share stories of the night they faced the entity, of the strength they found in each other, and of the light that can exist even in the darkest of times. And as they do so, they begin to see the seeds of a new future taking root. A future where they are not defined by the horrors they have faced, but by the love and resilience that has carried them through. A future where they are stronger together, where they can face any challenge that comes their way, and where the light of hope will always shine brightest. Thank you so much for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform. Until next time, happy movie watching.